Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you like the show, we would love it if you like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
What's going on is today we are talking about the last couple episodes of The Acolyte, in particular episodes Choice and The Acolyte, episodes 7 and 8, as we wrap up our thoughts on the series from this week's finale. If you want more of our thoughts on The Acolyte, you got episodes 219, 221, and 223 for the other three pairings of episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, 6. Why do we pick it? Because it's the new Star Wars thing, and we were trying something different to help kind of fill the weekly content gaps this time around. Our episodes had the history lesson here, originally released between June 4th, 2024 and July 16th, 2024. The episodes had a runtime between 35 and 45-ish minutes. In the Star Wars TV timeline of things, we had the Obi-Wan Kenobi series back in the summer of 2022, Andor in September through November of that year as well. The Mandalorian Season 3 was March and April of last year, 2023. Ahsoka was August and October of last year, August through October of last year. Here we have the Acolyte. Up next, we have Skeleton Crew, although I don't know if we ever got a date for that yet, or if it's still TBD. I think we've got a date coming now, maybe September, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, Skeleton Crew's next. Then we'll have somewhere down the pipe in 2025 or beyond, Season 2 of Andor and Season 2 of Ahsoka. No idea if we're going to have a Season 2 of The Acolyte or not. We will see, I imagine, as the days go by. Roll call here. If you've been following along, we've covered, I believe, all of these names before, so I won't go too in-depth. I think there's really only one new person that was only in this episode that I'm going to call out. But our directors here, Leslie Ann Headland, who's also the showrunner of the show. She also directed episodes 1 and 2. Kogo Nada directed the episodes Destiny and Choice. Alex Garcia Lopez directed Day and Night. And Hanel Culpepper directed the episodes Teach Corrupt and the finale here, The Acolyte. If you want some of their additional credits, you can catch those in any of the other episodes we've done where we've gone through those in a little bit more detail. Our writers here, Leslie A. Headland wrote the episodes Lost Found and Teach Corrupt. Jason Mikheyev wrote Revenge Justice and the finale, The Acolyte. Charmaine DeGratte wrote Revenge Justice and Choice. Jasmine Flournoy wrote Destiny and Choice. Eileen Shim wrote Destiny. Claire Keishel wrote Day. Cora Donna wrote on Day and Night. Cameron Squires wrote on Night. Jocelyn Bio wrote on Teach and Corrupt. There are two new names. One of the new ones here, Jen Richards, wrote on Choice. She also previously wrote on the project Her Story. And then our cast of characters here, Amanda Stenberg as May and Osha, going with credits all the way going back to her time as Rue in the Hunger Games. Lee Jung-jae as Master Soul from Squid Game. Manny Jacinto as Kamir / The Stranger, having been in The Good Place and Top Gun Maverick. Daphne Keane as Jackie Lon, having been in Logan and His Dark Materials. We talked about her last week in our Logan episode of That D Plus Show. Charlie Barnett as Yord, having been in Men in Black 3, Chicago Fire, and Russian Doll. Rebecca Henderson as Vernestra Rowe in Westworld, Werewolves Within, and Russian Doll. Carrie-Anne Moss as Master Endara, of course, from The Matrix and many, many other things. Junos Suotamo as Kel Naka, having been Chewbacca in some of the later Star Wars things. Dean Charles Chapman as the Jedi Padawan Torban, having been Tommen in Game of Thrones, as well as the film 1917. Laura and Leah Brady are Little Usha and Little May, respectively. Jodie Turner-Smith as Mother Anastasia, who we got kind of the return of in episode 7 here. She's been in True Blood and Murder Mystery 2 and Sex Education. Margarita Leviva as Coril, Mother Coral, having been in Revenge, The Blacklist, and The Deuce. And the other new name into the fold here, David Harewood, makes his debut in the final episode as Senator Rayencourt, having previously been in projects like Homeland, a couple episodes of Doctor Who, back in the original David Tennant era. He was John Johns in Supergirl, and most recently probably seen to a lot of gamers in Alan Wake 2. Our trivia across the series, of course, we always call it out. The I've got a bad feeling about this line went to Yord back in episode 1 or 2 or something like that. The series takes place in the final days of the High Republic era, roughly 100 years prior to the events of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And then a couple of big, beefy trivia bits in this one. Episode 7, Choice. Master Endara mentions that all life on Brendok was destroyed a century earlier by a hyperspace disaster. She's referring to the Great Hyperspace Disaster, also called the Legacy Run Disaster, which is a major event from the High Republic novels that had major repercussions for the Republic and the galaxy. In 232 BBY, the transport freighter Legacy Run departed the core worlds carrying 9,000 colonists on their way to the Outer Rim. As the ship was traveling through hyperspace, it suddenly encountered an object ahead of them in the hyperspace lane, something that should have been impossible. Legacy Run attempted to alter course to avoid a collision, but the massive and aging freighter was not designed for that kind of sudden maneuvering in hyperspace and was torn apart in the process. Fragments of the massive ship falling out of hyperspace caused massive damage to anything they struck, even destroying planets due to the tremendous amount of kinetic energy the fragments possessed, since they were traveling very near the speed of light on impact. Fragments from the ship randomly exited hyperspace throughout the Outer Rim for months after the disaster and were encountered by ships traveling through hyperspace. This forced the Republic to close all hyperspace routes until the disaster passed, leaving worlds effectively isolated for over a year. So that was a fun little, that's an interesting tidbit from the High Republic novels and whatnot. And some
Super
trivia.
cool. Very cool. I really love that idea. It's like, hey, sometimes bad things happen, and because crazy stuff happens, and it reminded me a lot of, what if the Challenger explosion had more serious repercussions, basically, or the Hindenburg, had a more sci-fi explosive terrible thing happening.
Sure.
Other than ruining our cool cyberpunk future of air dirigibles.
Yeah. And then a couple of bits of trivia here from The Acolyte, episode 8. This is the first time in the series or in a series or film that the process of bleeding a kyber crystal is shown. The only other time we've seen the bleeding process has been, or the only other time the bleeding process has been seen on screen was when the fallen Jedi Dagan Gera, also from the High Republic era, his rage and hatred corrupted his kyber crystal when he was dueling former Padawan Cal Kestis in Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Incredibly cool moment in that game.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it is something that we have. I think the first time it's ever been mentioned was in Darth, an old Darth Maul novel, post Episode 1's launch. It was a novel that came out. It talked about how by taking a kyber crystal, or at the time it was just being called lightsaber crystals, and infusing with hatred and anger, he was able to turn it red. There's also synthetic crystals, which are what Darth Vader and Darth Sidious both used.
Yeah.
Although that might have been retcon.
So the actual IMDb trivia went on into some of that, I think. The reason lightsabers carried by Sith and Dark Jedi are red is because the kyber crystal has been corrupted by the dark side of the Force. Dark side adept uses the Force to bend the crystal to their will. This process changes the color of the crystal to red. The canon comic book Darth Vader reveals that when a Sith Lord makes their first lightsaber, they must kill a Jedi in combat and take the crystal from their lightsaber and bleed it to use as their own, which is why the stranger tasked May to kill a Jedi without using a weapon. Canon novel Ahsoka in 2016 also reveals that the light side of the Force can heal a red kyber crystal and remove the corruption, turning the crystal's color white, which is why Ahsoka Tano's lightsabers in Rebels are Mandalorian and Ahsoka have white blades. She took the kyber crystals from an Inquisitor's lightsaber after defeating him in a duel and healed them with the light side and used them in her newly constructed sabers. And then the other big trivia thing is the figure in the cave at the unknown planet fits the description of Darth Plagueis from Legends. What did you think when Darth Plagueis popped up on the screen there, Cam?
Thought it was very, very cool. It's important to remember that this show is called the Acolyte, which is a term used for dark side practitioners who are not part of the core rule of two. And it brings to mind when in episode 6, when the stranger tells tells Osha what he wants is he wants the power of two. This now kind of sets up a very like, okay, well, why was the stranger being coy and hiding his identity? Was that something he picked up from his master, Darth Plagueis? Like, is that something that he picked up from him? And so he tried doing the same thing with his own acolyte, and it didn't end up working out. With in the case of May, it brings to mind a lot of things. But I love this idea that, for one thing, people are like, oh, like I remember seeing like people on Twitter being like, can't believe a bunch of lesbian space witches are the reason why like they're retconning like Darth Plagueis had the idea from watching like seeing the product of a bunch of like lesbian space witches, and it's like you're missing the point, which is that these girls are actually a single person, and the divergence in the Force and everything that we learned about in episode 5 or episode 7 and 8 are the reason they're special is because of this incident of their birth. The what caused their birth to happen is it took a literal like massive force phenomena to give the witches the ability to even do this. Like, which tells you that the creation of life is not just I created life. It requires ritual and process. And the most they were able to do when making that life was put it into 2 bodies, because it was like the idea of putting it into one. It was like there's something about like bringing together life in that way that is difficult, and that's what really came off to me as part of it. I loved it. I think that was a great Darth Plagueis showing up. Did not expect that. I totally had a full on like Leonardo DiCaprio like like moment like in the chair like that like yesterday in the middle of the day. I was like, oh my god, like what the fuck? I think I actually shouted it. But yeah, it was an awesome kind of like surprise and reveal. It's like, okay, cool. They're not like really messing with like a pre-established timeline of Darth Plagueis, because Darth Plagueis is part of an alien race that lives for a very long time, and him being kind of a master in the shadows is a good nod to like Palpatine and Darth Sidious being like the master in the shadows while the apprentice is out there doing things. It also speaks to, oh, the stranger is not the master. Which gives the apprentice, which makes him the apprentice, which makes him have a feeling of a very centralized feeling, for me at least, that like his hunger that he has about wanting to use his power, about wanting to show himself to the galaxy, is very much fits the apprentice mentality. That the apprentice should be craving and hunger for power from the master. And a way to do that is to build an acolyte. Asajj Ventress is the first acolyte in the Clone Wars, being trained by Darth Tyrannus, Count Dooku, by establishing that. We see that in the Clone Wars cartoon, which is Asajj Ventress at that point is like such a great character. She's even brought into the Clone Wars, or Star Wars Clone Wars proper, right? Like it's such a cool character that they even like have now retconned her death out. They're like, no, we want more Asajj Ventress in the future. With her,
how do you mean they retconned it? If they had had they ever established her death?
Yes, but no. They changed they approached it differently with the Asajj Ventress novel came out and kind of like retconned the like quote unquote unconfirmed nature of her death by kind of like changing it a bit, is what my understanding was. I'm pretty sure she never had like an outright like this is where Asajj Ventress dies. I might be wrong on that though.
Yeah, I admittedly like when I first watched the show, the episode, I might have registered that there was like a weird creature in the cave kind of thing. Didn't know that that was supposed to be Plagueis until I was putting together this document and saw the trivia thing of like first canon appearance of Darth Plagueis in live action. And I was like, wait, what? when was he? Which was weird because like I had seen Plagueis trending following the episode when it originally aired, but I was like, okay, I guess the fandom is up in arms or something like that, because I didn't bother clicking the thing. And then yeah, I Googled like where was Darth Plagueis in the Acolyte and saw the screenshot. I was like, oh, I guess I kind of vaguely remember that guy. I went back and like rewatched. I was like, oh yeah, there he is, and they give him a big little moment. But I was like, oh, that's a creepy, master from the wings or something like that is all I read it as. So shout out to the nerds that knew Darth Plagueis on sight, compared to the the simps like me that just know the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. A couple other little things here I wanted to shout out. In particular, not trivia, but these were a couple quotes that I really enjoyed. One, I really like the scene between Senator Raincourt and Vernestra Rowe. Speaking of, you don't like me. You think my campaign for an external review of the Jedi is a personal vendetta? Well, if you want my opinion, my honest opinion, yes. Good. Well, here's mine. I think the Jedi are a massive system of unchecked power, posing as religion, a delusional cult that claims to control the uncontrollable. We don't control the Force. Not the Force. Your emotions. You project and imagine of goodness and restraint, but it's only a matter of time before one of you snaps. And when, not if that happens, who will be strong enough to stop him? Well, that's certainly an opinion, and not one shared by the rest of the Senate. So yeah, I just love that idea of like the delusion of the Jedi to not have emotions. When yeah, every Jedi we've ever seen has has emotions, despite constantly saying like, no, we suppress those emotions. We keep that down. So I love that, like,
Oh yeah, that call out.
that
It's so
call
good.
out of like, no, I'm not talking about the Force. Fuck your Force, whatever.
Like the Force. He goes the Force. It's what is, oh shoot, it's from New Hope. Something about the Moff who tells off Darth Vader about his hokey religion.
Yeah.
Like straight up just like your stupid religion, no. Like you're masquerading as a dumb religious monks, but like the reality of the matter is like you are super powered human beings, or like super powered like individuals who have incredible power and have massive sway in the galaxy, and I don't know why nobody thinks that this is a problem. Like it 100% is. You are space cops, and like and the entire time you are bottling up your emotions, and it's only a matter of time when somebody snaps.
Yeah.
Because if you look at all the problems of the Jedi, like almost every single problem the Jedi ever encounter in their entire history comes from internal. Like it's an internal issue, like that bubbles out over. Like dude couldn't be openly married to his wife, so he like helps like overthrow the Republic. Like the problems with the Jedi, it's like well, the Sith is like, no. The Sith just like usually prey on the weakness of the Jedi.
Yeah.
They prey on it. Like, why do so many Jedi end up falling? It's like, well, because you finally are able to gaslight them into thinking that their emotionlessness is the problem. And the only way to solve that is by throwing all your emotions out. Like,
Yeah. Or
like,
you consider the fact that they have emotions falling, as kind of OSHA has dealt with here, of like,
yeah.
I left the Jedi because I failed or whatever. Yeah, all that stuff.
That whole like, God, it's so good. It's such a good, like, for somebody who has always not been a big fan of the like Jedi apologists who are out there always saying like, well, all this stuff about questioning, and like this has come up a lot in Acolyte discourse, is like, the Jedi aren't being shown, like, this is the High Republic, the Jedi are like the bastion of good. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Just because you're the bastion of good doesn't mean that you don't have problems. Like, the problems for the Jedi are you're more connected to the Force when you give yourself into it. But this misunderstanding of that is that you have to, like, abandon what makes you a person, is the contradiction and hypocrisy of the Jedi. Like it is what it is. Like I love that this is called out here. I love that it's done so well. I love that like this delusional cult that claims to control the uncontrollable. We don't control the Force. You immediately go to the thing that you think gives you the power. And instead, the senator is like, no. It's you don't think that you can be people.
Yeah.
That you're above being people. That's the thing. That's the problem.
The extra button that he could have put on it that would have like sent this into the stratosphere, and I'm sure pissed a lot of people off, would have been like if he specifically calls them out as like a delusional cult of child traffickers that claims to control the uncontrollable. But
that would have been so good. Oh my gosh, that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Like child kidnapper.
Yeah.
I don't know. But also, let's also be realistic. When you have the ability to wave your hand and convince people to let you do it that you want, how many times did you do that with Force children? Like Force sensitive children? Like
or the parents of the Force sensitive children.
Yeah.
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 Oh, you don't want to let this child come train with us? Yes, you do.
Yes, you do. You think it's a good idea. Like, you can't tell me that has never happened in the history of the Jedi Order. I won't believe you.
I mean, clearly, given Vernestra's like cover up that we get at the end of this, of course that level of corruption has existed in the Order. Which also shout out to going back to a comment you said of like the whiny babies out there like saying, oh, they retcon blah 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 blah. It's like, oh, the people who were pissed off about like Kidi Mundi saying like there hasn't been a Sith in 1,000 years. Hey,
yeah,
not a bad thing because he's clearly covered up and he clearly doesn't know that like all this other stuff has happened because Vernestra puts it all on Soul.
Yeah, like Vernestra puts it all on Soul. Yeah,
he wasn't a Sith. He was a fallen Jedi.
Yeah,
succumbed to his emotions. Blah blah. And just the like, yeah, Soul wasn't great, but like also fuck you for hiding, especially the fact that it's your own Padawan who is Kamir. Which is very much one of those like theories that had kind of made the rounds beforehand. But yeah, like, and then like the thing that I'm more like, all right, well, what the fuck are you trying to say here is like, I guess it's okay. Are you going to try and convince me that you're coming in here and going to confess all of what's happened to Master Yoda? Or are you going to try and convince me that you're going to lie to Master Yoda and Master Yoda isn't going to see through that? Because that's what would, have to make sense for canon stuff. So, and if, I suppose if we get a season 2, maybe we'll get an answer to that. But
people don't think a couple hundred years before the prequel movies, Yoda wasn't playing politics. Yoda okays a like coup on Palpatine. Like, let's be very, very straightforward here. They're like, we have evidence that Palpatine is the Sith Lord to do that. Okay, cool. Where's your tribe? Like, there's no tribunal. There's no anything. The Jedi go to apprehend him and immediately light up lightsabers as a show of force. Like, is he a Sith Lord? Yeah. Like, yes, I get that. I understand why they're being prepared for that. But to a regular person watching that happen, that is a bunch of Jedi High Council members walking in to take control of the government.
Who are the regular people in that room?
There were no regular people in the room. I'm saying if I was a regular person in that room, that's what I would have seen. Sorry, to clarify, there were regular people in that room. But had I been one, I would have been like, oh, hey, granted, that's all out the window when you see Darth Sidious do that flip and cut down like 4 Jedi at once. Mm-hmm. Also, had like cool, fun note, Sidious only ever used the first form, Way of the Sarlacc, with his lightsaber combat, which is the first form that you teach younglings that most Jedi no longer like use in their practice anymore. So Sidious using the basics, using the very basics of lightsaber combat to cut down 4 masters, which shows you master the basics, you're pretty good, you're pretty set. Just a little fun tidbit out there about that.
All right. The other quote to shout out, of course, May's quote of "See you in hell, Jedi."
So good. Granted, I don't think it works. But.
I was like, okay, so there's confirming that hell is a thing in here. It's up there with like, I guess meat's back on the menu, boys. In
Yeah.
in
Oh, you
Lord of
have
the Rings.
menus. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
that is very much
what is,
within that line.
yeah, what is the logic of orc culture that and Urukai culture that menus are back in the mix or whatever? Yeah.
Yep. It's 100% one of those. It's oh, this line doesn't actually make sense in the universe when you think about it, but it's a fun line.
Yeah. Or like it's very much like now it's what is hell and who's gonna write that spin-off, comic book story or whatever.
Sure.
Of like, it's not, the religious hell we think of. It's the fiery planet that is like a twin planet to Mustafar or something like that.
Oh yeah, you could totally do it. It's like see you in hell, she says. So
Yeah.
oh, maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like, what is hell? It's like, well, it's a philosophical position that you live in.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be tortured forever. Like like you could even say like, well, that's us understanding it from our language.
Sure.
What could it mean in
Sure,
the
yeah.
intergalactic basic?
Yeah, that's us hearing this transposed through Arabesh or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Easily
Arakesh or whatever.
explainable way.
Yeah.
Like,
But I'm sure fans are going to piss about it for a while anyway. Quote unquote fans.
yeah, like fake fans. Real fans, we don't give a shit. Because they also say, like, this is not the first time somebody's referenced hell as like a, like go fuck yourself moment, I'm pretty sure, in like Star Wars books and stuff. Like, you can't tell me the word hell has never popped up. Give them hell or blast them, like get real. Granted, could they have made it more nerdy and been like eat poodoo, nerf herder?
Yeah.
Sure.
But then it feels extra forced.
Exactly.
In the same way of like, no, man, you named it jizz music. Just stick with jizz music. At
Yep,
this
you
point.
cannot tell me that Andor does not have a marching jizz band.
Especially after, yeah. I mean, well, no, we see it in Andor. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You can't tell me that's not what it's called now.
Gotcha.
That's what I meant to say. You can't tell me that it's not jizz. You can try to class it up as much as you want, but we will always call it jizz music.
Yeah.
Or sorry, we call it jizz, which is the music of Star Wars. If there's music, that's jizz.
So what did you think of this pair of episodes here, Cam? We start with Choice, where we have kind of our return to the Brendock flashback, where we see what really happened.
We see the two perspectives of Sol and May on what happened. We got a lot of May's perspective in the previous episode, but now we get kind of like her perspective post-fire, accidentally like starting the fire, but not expecting the fire to like get out of hand to that level. Mm-hmm. And then that combined with like Sol's perspective. And we see from Sol's perspective, like the whole situation, how everything goes down. Everything that could go wrong goes wrong in these moments.
Yeah. One of the things that immediately that jumped out to me, and I was like, I had a very different understanding from the first episode of like the time that the Jedi had been on the planet. And
Yes.
like the first episode very much made, and I haven't gone back and like rewatched to like see if it was just a misconception on my part. But my takeaway after the first episode was that like these two forces, the Jedi and the Coven, like knew of each other's presence long before the events of that day. Whereas like this episode was like, no, that's their first time ever meeting is when the Jedi show up. Like Sol seeing the twins is the first time like they've encountered the Coven at all on this planet. And I did not get that impression the first time around.
I didn't get that impression, but also it never occurred to me that wasn't the case, I guess.
It like
I easily understood. It felt like this is the first time the two groups had encountered, like talked to each other.
Yeah, maybe it's something that because I feel like or Mother Coral says something to Anastasia of like we're keeping tabs on the Jedi or something like that. So I guess at the very least, like the Coven knew that the Jedi were there, but the Jedi clearly didn't know the Coven. But I still didn't get that feeling. I like the sense I got from the first time around was not that this was that like Indara and Sol and Kelnaka and Torben coming in. I did not get the sense that was their first time at this place.
I did. I thought that was the case.
Okay.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't think well, let me rephrase that. I never felt like there was anything against that being the case. I did not really put that much thought into it. I was like, oh, they're confronting each other. And by Soul's reaction, this is the first time that they're really like dealing with each other. And so I thought maybe that they were ignoring each other. But for it to be like, oh no, the Coven was hiding from the Jedi, and we're keeping tabs on the Jedi, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Because like, yeah, we haven't seen anybody. Well, if you haven't seen anybody and you've been on the planet for such a long time, it's probably on purpose. If people are actually there, granted, it's a great cover up as far as like, or not cover up. It's a great hiding spot. Like, this planet's supposed to be completely destroyed after the hyperspace disaster. There's life flourishing on it. We think there might be a cause for a divergence, so we're here to investigate.
Avergence.
Avergence, sorry, not divergence. Avergence. Vergence coming together, not coming apart. Yeah.
There was when you were talking about the Vergence earlier and kind of like that bringing life to this planet, it immediately, I hadn't thought this prior to kind of this conversation, but now all I can think about is like the life stream from Final Fantasy VII. And like, oh yeah, such death and like trauma hit this world, and now it is like coming back to life because of the Force. Bringing stuff back.
I really like the way that they've. I know I've said it before. I'll say it again. I love the way they've retconned midichlorians to be like, hey, these are just like bacteria that are indicators of like these are what they eat is the Force. Like they eat the Force that travels through people. So if the Force travels more through somebody than somebody else, you're going to have the higher count of midichlorians. I like that idea. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, it just means you're more predisposed to the Force than other people are. I like that retcon that they've made. So, like, the M count is, like, off the chart. Like, oh, man, M count's off the charts. Like, cool. So we know that this is not we know that it fits within the criteria of life being created this way through the Force does cause that high M count. It is not necessarily a sign of quote unquote the chosen one. I think what they've done with this is they've kind of like through the episode 7, they have in a great way deconstructed a lot of the kind of like predispositions that people took about what the prophecy of the chosen one is. The chosen one will be strong in the Force. There's nothing about like the chosen one's midichlorian count is going to be 5 million. Like, that's not the case. That's how Qui-Gon interpreted the results of that test, and also seeing Anakin's abilities. That he's strong in the Force, born without a father. Like a lot of this sort of prophecy stuff about it, and it's like, well, why was it important that he's born without a father? One, it's the Jesus allegory, but also like the Savior allegory. Period. Like not just Jesus, but other cultures also have born without a father as like a predisposition towards greatness. Or even like, you know, the father is like not of this world, a la Peter Quill, a la Jesus, a la demigods from Greek mythology, that sort of a thing. So predisposed towards greatness, having prophecy about them, that's very atypical for this sort of figure within a mythology. Then we have, or like just cultural, religious. I don't want to offend anybody by calling Christianity a mythology. That being said, what this does for us is it shows us that there is more than one, like that this idea of verging life, this idea of bringing life to be through actions by using the Force is something that is not just it is confirmed to be a technique within the Force. However, I like the idea that it is effort. Like when they are channeling the Force on the planet, it is a ritual. These coven of witches, they use their collective abilities and their collective talent to channel the Force through a sort of linking, or sort of, and it reminds me a lot of like the source from the Wheel of Time, which means nothing to you, but for folks out there, the idea of like, there's this group called the Aes Sedai that are capable of linking their abilities to each other, and in doing so are able to channel more of the power source of that world. And we've seen, like, this is the first time that we've seen on screen at the very least, we've seen that happen. And so it's the idea that many weaker Force users could come together and in a ritual combine their abilities is something we see in books a lot. Like we see a lot of the other materials, and we see a lot in Sith cults. Love the idea of seeing, like, once again, we're getting like, hey, you don't have to be from Dathomir to be a Force witch. Like that. Like a lot of the concepts around a lot of the kind of the ritualisticness of the Force outside of the Jedi, we got a bigger clue into that. And also we got to see this group is very distrustful of the Jedi to begin with, but they give them leave. They allow them to test. There is that really awesome moment where the Coven is just like, you can't let Osha go. What was our purpose? What did we do here if Osha leaves and becomes a Jedi? And kind of like the kind of falling apart that they have because, I'm trying to remember her name.
Anastasia.
Mother Anastasia's love as a mother comes through in the end. Mm-hmm. And in the end, Coral's love as a mother also comes through. Coral carried them. She's like, like in episode 3, we see, she's like, I carried them. Like, I'm their mother too. And I'm not going to let these people who have, there's a deep feeling of like righteous, like anger, a lot of like righteous attitude towards the Jedi that really makes you look at it and be like, these women have been chased. They have been harangued and they have been chased, whether by the Jedi or because of the Jedi. Like the idea, like the Jedi are the officially sanctioned religious movement of the Force users in the galaxy, which brings to mind like a lot of like, the official religion of European nations, the wars and conflicts that it caused. Like, I think it'd be cool for us to see like that sort of aspect being brought more into Star Wars. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more historic. Like, it's a really cool historical accurate way of looking at conflict between planets and systems. That could be cool.
It's like the witches' coven here have been vilified by the Jedi in the same way that like Sharia law has been vilified by Christians and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing. Like that idea of like, oh, it's different. It's not following our ways. You're not sexless monks who suppress their emotions. And it's like, it is this moment, it is a desire to protect her daughters that leads Coral to, Coral's like, I won't be the one, but she convinces May to smash the terminal. She convinces May, you have to stop your sister. Like, and May doing what she thinks she needs to do to stop her sister from leaving. And then realizes it's getting out of hand. And the lead up to that and the confrontation between Sol and Torben there, and like that Anastasia thinking that she needs to get like Osha's in danger now. May's in danger. Like something's gonna happen, so she wraiths, I guess, to try to get to Osha faster. And Sol's instinct is to ignite his lightsaber right where she is and like kills her. Something I appreciate about Sol's character is that he thinks he still did the right thing. Mm-hmm. He's convinced he did the right thing. He is apologetic that it happened, but he thinks he did the right thing, which is something we see a lot in people of authority who refuse to admit they made the wrong choice. Mm-hmm. They're sorry that the result happened, but they refuse to admit that they made a wrong decision in that split-second moment.
Yeah.
And I appreciated seeing, again, a glaring weakness of Sol is that he can't be wrong about the decisions he made that night. And how it ends up leading to his demise, his death in episode 8. Episode 7, I think, I was not happy that we went back to it, but what we get at the very end of kind of the conflict, Kelnaka being possessed, explains why Kelnaka is hermiting. Torben, like what happened with Torben and everyone else. My thing that I was not expecting is that, I'm trying to remember her name. She is the first master who gets killed in episode 1. Indara breaking the hold that the Coven has on Kelnaka, just outright killing the witches. Or rather, she used the connection that they had to connect to them and then killed them with it. Which I read it as more as she willingly let the witches die to basically break Kelnaka out of that. Like, that is a master that is a taboo for her to do. In my mind, which is why she was in, like, we gotta hide this. And the cover up that we get at the end of that episode is just, we see Sol make a decision to let May drop. He had to choose one. And he chose Osha. And it's so good because it's like, here's the other side of this is the other point of view that we're getting from we're getting the certain point of view from May and Soul's perspectives in this episode. And I love it. And then it leads us into episode 8, which I think is really cool. I feel like it's a bit too much contained in a single episode. But I really, really love the way that things go down as far as how the situation Osha's falling to the dark side, corrupting Soul's crystal in his lightsaber, and then, killing him without using a weapon.
Yeah. Good old-fashioned force choke.
Yep.
Yeah, before we get to that...
Oh, and then Soul letting her do it.
Yeah, like, it's okay kind of thing.
Yeah, it's okay. I understand. Like, you can do this. And it's like, it reminded me a little bit of the, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Flip of that. Shut up. Stop talking. Like, anger. Possessive anger doing this. And just so good.
Yeah, I like the opening sequence that has Osha in the helmet and like losing control / tapping into her witch power thing that like becomes so overpowering that even Kamir's like struggling to try and like break her out of it kind of thing. I don't know what it's supposed to signify and mean, but I liked the like cutting back and forth between kind of the same motif or imagery that we saw with Mother Anastasia controlling Torben, of like we see kind of the gray background and Kamir in there like in control of his faculties but trying to like break out of it.
Yep.
And then like we cut to like seemingly what's really happening, and his eyes are black and he's like
it's so cool.
frozen in like pain and convulsion kind of thing.
It was so good. The way that camera cut happened is so damn good.
Yeah. So yeah, really liked all that stuff. And the like, if anything, the weird takeaway from it almost ends up being like, I guess it makes sense because Kamir, like, she doesn't know how powerful she just was in this moment, but Kamir does. And so like he tries to still kind of like play it off as like, yeah, I'll let you be my apprentice if you want to be my apprentice. And she's like, no, I won't do it. And he's like, well, your sister took that deal immediately kind of thing.
Awesome. Love
like,
that.
Yeah,
Love that parallel of like, you really are different.
Yeah.
Which plays into episode 2 when he has you guys look so similar, but you're so different. Which is crazy because also we find out like they're technically the same person.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's a whole nurture versus nature allegory.
Yep.
I will say like one of the things that the final episode, and yeah, maybe this, like, it is a self-inflicted wound from the show of like, well, nobody told you that it could only be 8 episodes or whatever. So like, don't try and tell me like, oh, we just didn't have time for it. But I really don't like the hand waving of like, yeah, like May fell and she was okay. She then like went out a drain, as a, 8-year-old kid or whatever, May, survives that fall, walks out the drain and goes to the tree kind of thing. And then survives for, however long.
I didn't take it as she said she got sucked into it, which led me to believe it was. It reminded me of Luke.
It's Luke in Bespin. That's fine.
Yeah, that's what that reminded me of. Is like that side chute opening up and sucking her in.
But the question still persists of like, okay,
well, what did she do after?
Well, she was alone on that planet after this point. So yeah, what was the rest of her story between there and getting to the strangers / going and killing Indara? And it's like they just kind of like, we don't need to focus on it. Don't think about that. You're not worried about that kind of thing.
For me, it's 2 things. I figured, one, there's a reason why we don't see skeletons in the courtyard or anywhere in there. My thought is May went back and like buried them or burnt, like took care of their bodies. And the second thing is, I think they still have the ship they came to the planet on.
Yeah, I mean,
how she piloted it as a child, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. But that to me is like an easy out for that. Is Oh no, they're still like that ship that they came to the planet on.
I mean, the easy out for the bodies for me is the Jedi, disposed of them before they fled with their cover story kind of thing. But I don't know. Ultimately, it's a whatever. Nobody cares.
True.
But like it's the thing where I'm like, okay, well, we got plenty of like where OSHA had been over that time period, and then May just appears out of nowhere, and everybody thought she was dead and all this stuff, and so it's like, well, that's the way more interesting bit is how did May get from there to the beginning of the first episode, like what was her meeting with Kamir, what like how did that whole thing kind of come to be. And yeah,
I love looking back at episode 2, Torben's death.
Mm-hmm.
There was something about that this episode brought, or episode 7 brought to life for me a little bit, which was the guilt of, I just wanted to go home. I didn't want what happened to happen. The easiest route to take was just to like I didn't mean for this to happen.
Take some kids and get home. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we just wanted to help. We just wanted to help, and things went so sideways. And he was a kid. Like he was a Padawan. He was a kid. And it happened. What's interesting is that he continued his Jedi career for a long period of time, because by the time we see him in episode 2, he is Master Torben. Mm-hmm. So we know that he completed his training, became a knight, and then even became a master. At which point he then entered into his, at what point does the guilt get to him?
Yeah.
It was an interesting thought. It's not like, oh, immediately he goes and does enters into his pact. It takes time.
Yeah. Especially because it was what he had been. So I'm reading back through the synopsis, and Torben, it's 16 years later. That is the time between the fall of Brendok and today kind of thing, and Torben has been floating in silent meditation for over a decade. So he went from Padawan to Master in less than 6 years. High Republic was a different time, I guess.
Yep. I mean, we saw the kind of caliber of Jedi they were bringing in. Let's be real.
Sure. Or everybody's a Jedi. You're a Jedi. You're a master. You're a master. You're a master.
Well, maybe at one point Torben had to sit on the council. Like, well, we got to make you a master then, because it's never been done before where they don't let a master sit on the council.
Sure. Yeah. That won't bite anybody in the ass 100 years from now. But yeah, there's elements of this that I'm like, oh, I wonder if that would, if my perspective now seeing the whole thing would change on a rewatch. But then there's also bits where I'm like, kind of like, I didn't hate this series at all, but like by the end I was kind of like tired of it, and it wasn't like impressing me in ways that I wanted it to. So I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, I don't really want to go back and rewatch it to see if like, oh, there are those Easter egg things. There are a few like cool sequences that I would be happy to revisit. Like I very much enjoyed like a lot of the combat stuff. Shout out to the final episode that has a lot of cool stuff there, as well as the choice episode that has a lot of cool stuff in the Wookiee fight. But yeah, then there are a lot of moments where I was just like, I don't like the choices that are being made that feel like the easy way out in a lot of ways. Like I felt there could have been a much more nuanced version of Soul from like those first couple episodes, and then it kind of like as the show went on, I kind of started feeling Soul as more of just a one-note character of like, oh, his emotions got the better of him and he chose to save Osha and he can't let that go, and that's where we're at. Like the like, oh yeah, he's as all Jedi are broken and can't like confront the tragedies of their past or whatever, that because they've indoctrinated themselves to denying their emotions or whatever. And it's like, well, no, you clearly have those emotions. It's like you made the post about Game of Thrones, but like, man will go and do anything rather than go to therapy.
accurate. Yes.
Man will go back to Brendock rather than go to therapy. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, I'm sending you something that I saw earlier that I was like looking for. Somebody's like, "Hey, I think my episode of The Acolyte was different than everybody else's."
Okay.
I sent it to you in Discord. So
Oh, in Discord. All right, I gotta pull that up now.
I didn't know you had it minimized. I keep mine up all the time too.
I mean, I have so many things on my screen.
That's fair.
I have the doc on my screen. I have like, so Discord is, I pull it up for the video and then like drop it out. There you go. That's funny. Ha ha ha. Well, especially because they're doing the like Lego Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy thing that does have Darth Jar Jar coming. The image that he shared was basically Jar Jar in the place of Darth Plagueis. For those that can't see what I'm looking at here,
just a fun thing that I had seen on the internet like over the last couple of days. I was like, this is just great. So
yeah. Like if they come back and do a season 2, of course I'll sit down and watch it. Like I still at the end of the day enjoy Star Wars enough that I want to keep seeing, new stories they tell and stuff like that. But ultimately, like the show lost goodwill with me over the run of the show, and it just kind of there'd be like a little peak back up, and then like it'd be like, I don't like this, and not even like I don't like this so much as like before we're sitting down to record this episode, I was like, what the hell happened in the last couple of like in Choice and like even before that, I was like, what had happened before that? Where like, and I think part of that is like the pacing of the season of like,
I would say the pacing.
All right, 2 episodes, and now we're doing a flashback episode, and then doing another 3 episodes.
Bad.
And
I
then,
didn't care for it.
Then we go back to another Rashomon flashback episode, and it's like the other thought I was having yesterday was very much like this right on the heels of Doctor Who. I'm kind of done with Disney Plus 8-episode things because it's like, no, give me more. If you want to tell an interesting story, I want more of that interesting story. Nobody has been able to successfully like fit everything they want to do in 8 episodes.
I think that's the biggest flaw right now with Disney Plus's model because they're still using like the Netflix season model.
Yeah.
We've come
it's all of like the prestige TV stuff is like, hey, yeah, maybe 23 episodes a season wasn't great, but also this isn't the answer either. Like this is too little and too much time between seasons and stuff. You have very few like that are, The Last of Us or Watchmen that are like, yes, that was like a perfect, flawless, 8, 9 episodes, whatever it was, of like they told the story they wanted to tell versus like it feels like the pendulum's always swinging here. And there was like the Netflix shows where it was like, okay, 11, 12, 13 episodes, but 3 of them are filler and boring. So they're like, oh, we need to get rid of those filler ones. So we're just going to do 8 episodes. And here it's like, okay, but now you're trying to cram too much into too little time, and like nothing has room to breathe and nothing feels like it has impact because everything is just, at the same kind of pace. And like we need to find kind of the balance of like TV versus like, oh, should I really be thinking about this as like an 8-hour movie or like a 5-hour movie or something like that, or what, like where should we really be? Like Andor's probably the one they did the best on.
Yeah, I would agree.
And Andor was very much like, okay, yeah, the first 3 episodes were like a story arc kind of thing. Then we went into the other planet. That was a nice little story arc for the heist kind of thing. And then we had the prison stuff, and then we wrapped things up. And so that one, like, even there, they broke it out and treated it more like 4 movies as much as anything. Like compared to this, where I was like, yeah, I like day and night. Those 2 episodes are one episode that they split over 2 weeks. And then, everything else is just kind of like this is a weird, I would say it could have been like, the first 2 episodes, same kind of thing of like, okay, that's one story. And then now let's go back into the past. But then coming back again to the past, getting a lot of the same stuff just from a slightly different perspective or something. Like there wasn't there wasn't enough new, I think, in Choice for me to justify dedicating a whole second episode to that flashback.
I agree with you. I think Choice is such a. I think Choice is like the make or break it for this season. Is going back to the well for another flashback, just to get a different point of view. Like, I praised a lot of the stuff that happened in Choice. The fact that Choice happened where it happened in the storytelling beats doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
That is kind of like my takeaway from Choice as an episode is its placement is bad.
Yeah. It's like, okay, that's done. Now we have the full context of what happened, and now we have 40 minutes to wrap everything up in the finale.
And here's the thing, who says your finale has to be 40 minutes?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's what it actually was.
I don't think it was. I have no idea. What I'm also going to put out there is, like, who says your episodes have to be 40 minutes?
Yeah.
If you're going to do 8 episodes, do 8 episodes. But be 40 minutes, be an hour, be an hour and a half. Like, do what you need to do to tell the story for that episode. What is the episode before Choice? It is
Teach Corrupt.
Teach Corrupt. Having Teach Corrupt and Choice be a single episode would have been better. Cut off the unnecessary fat from Choice, where we are re-seeing things from a different point of view, so to speak. Tighten that story up a little bit, and then slide it into it, interspersed between Soul looking for May on the ship. Like that, like intersplicing their very complicated and very like adversarial relationship with what happens in Choice would have been a better way of using that rather than giving us a whole nother full episode of a flashback.
Yeah.
Like, I did not like the way that they chose to do it that way. Grant, like, we'll talk more about it when we give it our grade, but like, I do think that the final episode has way too much to try to carry because of that. There's way too much it's trying to wrap up, and we don't get to get a full breathing. There is a very compact, measured way that or a compact, not necessarily well measured way that they took the final confrontation between Soul and Osha, that I really would have preferred a little bit more time to breathe with that. Pun not intended. But because of the force choke.
So final episode per Disney Plus, 49 minutes, but that's also just like
extra
8 minutes of credits and stuff like that. So like it was the longest episode of the season. So it does have a little bit extra there, but yes, absolutely. Hey, you guys dictate the length of the story and all that stuff. Like you're not beholden to commercial breaks. You're not beholden to trying to fit into a time slot or anything like that. And you're more than happy to do like shorter episodes. So yeah, it doesn't make sense that like the finale, well, at least in this case, is the longer episode compared to some of their other shows where it's like the finale was like the shortest of the bunch. What the hell?
Yeah, I will say
it still is a disappointment.
I will say that when she's telling the tribunal about like what Soul did, I think it would have been a really cool thing for them to pull like maybe something from Usual Suspects where it shows like a quote unquote like altered flashback of where it's like Soul was behind it all, as kind of like setting that up rather than just getting that courtyard where she's like, "I'm sorry, my friend." That idea just came to me. I'm now seeing the flaws in that idea now. Granted, I would have been better than like a 40-minute flashback episode. For the second time. I think that's really where the problem with my biggest complaint about the Acolyte is it goes back to the well too many times for a few things. And not enough getting opportunities for these not newer things, but these other things to breathe, is kind of a problem. If you're only going to do 8 episodes, fuck the time of that episode. You sit down, you watch that entire episode. If it's good, people are going to want to sit through it. I felt like episodes of like the great episodes of Acolyte went by in a flash. Like it felt like 12 minutes. Because so much was happening and it was so incredible and I was getting so much storytelling. Night is like the perfect example of that. Night feels like 5 minutes long because everything happens so like succinctly in that episode, moment to moment, up until the very end of it, where I feel like it loses itself a little bit, with the kind of like identity swap that really doesn't ever really pay off well at all. It doesn't go well. Like I don't care for it.
Yeah, it's. I saw somebody else kind of making the reference of like, okay, I guess now that we have the understanding that like May and Osha are the same person. Like they're not, they're not twins or something. They are like in whatever force terms identical, the same kind of thing. Okay, I guess it makes a little bit more sense that like Soul doesn't immediately see through the fact that Osha or that May is Osha is.
I also see
being
that
Osha
as like
there.
a lot of like over analyzing his guilt.
Yeah, I would say there's plenty there. I think even without that, I think you have the benefit of okay, yeah, he's very distracted. That like this is the one survivor, so yeah, he doesn't need to immediately be able to piece together that it's the other person. He still pieces it together quicker than like the story probably really even needs him to.
Yeah,
so that,
absolutely.
So that it, like he is still like a master and like not deceived by that or whatever. But
Also, eliminate the tracker character. I hate it.
oh my god, I don't like what the hell was the point of that? Like every time they pop back
Whose
up
side
in the
is he
final
on?
episode, I was like, what are we doing?
Whose side is he on? He's just it makes no sense. This character makes no sense. He is never helpful to anybody that needs him to be helpful, ever.
Yeah.
He's useless.
He is.
Or sorry, let me rephrase that. He's worse than useless. He is an antagonistic element in every scene he's in. I hate him. I hate him so much.
He is the Jar Jar or the Ewok of this series. It is like that very much feels like the role that he was given here of like, oh, there'll be like comedic relief-y kind of moments. Or,
It's a cute little
whatever.
fuzzy thing that people will, it's like, no, fuck you. Fuck this little thing. I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. Whose side is he on? He's antagonistic to Soul. He's antagonistic to May. He's antagonistic to everyone. You know who is pretty consistent with their like whose side they're on? Pip. Pip is like, oh, Pip got factory reset, so now Pip is not listening to OSHA. It makes sense. Pip's lights are red now, not blue. I get that.
Speaking of, what did you think of May getting factory reset and kind of, oh look, it's the consequences of your own actions.
Do I like it? No. I don't. I never like a mind wipe as like a cop out.
Yeah.
Don't care for that. I think
for me it very much leaves like okay, well, what the hell's the point if they do a second season? What the hell's the point of May's character going to be? Like, especially like the thing they seem to be setting up is like Vernestra Rowe will like use her as the tracker to try and find her old Padawan Kamir and Osha. And it's like, well, if she's been wiped, like, what do you think that's going to do?
He says I can try to wipe her.
Sure,
like,
and
there's some possible gaps.
That's the
in
retconning that they're going to pull. Is like, oh no,
I mean,
like everything we're given here is suggesting, oh, the mind wipe worked. She doesn't remember she doesn't know she has a sister. She doesn't remember any of that stuff. She doesn't know who the man that Vernestra is referring to was. So it's like everything we're shown here is going to be belied if they come back in a season 2 and are like, oh, actually, like I've healed your mind and now you can remember who it was and all that. It's like that's a cop out.
Or maybe they answer the question of what happened to May after the fall of everything. If they take her back, like there's some things they could do to help her regain her memory. Where if they put in the legwork, I buy it.
Yeah, if anything, I guess that's even more of what it is. Is like it's not that like they just wiped May. I mean, it's they wiped OSHA but they wiped OSHA and everything that has happened to her since she fell. Like she doesn't have any memory following that. So
do they think May is OSHA?
No.
Oh, okay. You said OSHA then about like
I'm saying they wiped OSHA from May's mind.
Oh,
but also
sorry. I thought you were referencing May as OSHA. My apologies.
Gotcha. No, but then also, like Vernestra says something to the effect of like, "Oh, you don't remember anything that happened after your fall." Like, so so this is a 24-year-old person waking up with an 8-year-old's mind, basically.
Well, and the memories of an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
A big misconception that people have about like amnesia is somehow you're back to being 16. There is a phenomena that happens where like people who have amnesia know there's been a gap. They just can't remember what happened in that gap. So the idea that you're always acting like you're like, oh, I've lost all my memories up until I was 6 years old. I'm going to wake up and I'm going to think I'm 6. It's like, no, the memories you pull from will always be from up to when you were 6. But you you are in a different body now. Like there is a phenomena that happens where there's that disconnect. And that's why those people struggle in life. It's not because they only think they're 6. Like, a lot of times they're like, like people who have amnesia pick up old skills.
I think you're putting way more thought into this than they did.
When is that new, Trevor? When is that new?
But that's what I'm saying is like you're going down the rabbit hole of like, well, here's how actual amnesia patients, exist or whatever. Like, I just don't think they care about.
Listen, I get that,
degree
Trevor.
at all.
All right, I get that. I know they're going to be like, okay, we're going to go ahead and explain it away. But who knows? Maybe, just maybe,
Force
a
magic.
screenwriter is going to be like, hey, this is how we get, like, this is the science behind how it actually works. So let's do that. Maybe we do that rather than her thinking she's a 6-year-old, 24-year-old. Okay.
Yeah. No, I don't think they're going to be like, oh my god, they weren't going to do that. It's just
We're going to infantize.
It's just the weird like thought of, well, like, if you don't remember anything that happened after your fall, the thing here is the writers now have to do all of the legwork that you've already done on your own of understanding how amnesia patients work or something like that. Because the audience, like me, is going to look at that and be like, well, that's weird if she doesn't remember anything that happened after the fall, because that's all you've told me is she doesn't remember anything that happened after the fall. What is the rest of her 16 years, kind of, what does that 16-year gap look like in her mind? And they would need to kind of like explain that away, or they won't. And I think that's that's for me the pain point of doing we wiped her mind kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, even more so than that, it's like, okay, well then, yeah, what the hell's her point of her character? What is her character thing going to be in season 2? Like, I'm interested in the Osha Kamir relationship and like, that what that dynamic is, even if I think Osha, like, who was, good and moral for the first half of the thing, immediately like flips on a dime in the last 2 episodes kind of thing of like, yeah, no, I'm evil now. I'm hurt. And like, I do appreciate that it kind of has that moment. She has that confrontation with May of like, the reason I couldn't be a Jedi is because I never let my emotions and my hatred of you go. And that's what what Soul kept trying to get me to do, and May turns that on her of like, well, Soul's been lying to you this whole time, so it's his fault. Like, I appreciate that she's there wounded and stuff, but it still feels like a very whiplashy kind of like.
I didn't feel whiplashy because
turn.
I felt there was anger underneath her from the first time we meet her. There is a frustration and an anger there that I felt from the moment she's being accused of this crime by Yord. I felt there was a frustration and anger to her character that was also mixed with a lot of like guilt and feelings of inferiority and a lot of that I see her when the truth comes out. A lot of that gets uncorked, and that comes out in a violent way, which is not like we saw in episode 3. She's the first, before May does it, she does it with the butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she holds it and like does that to it, and then all of a sudden I oftentimes see that scene to me is definitive, and the fact that we only see Soul only sees the second half of that also immediately biases Soul against May in favor of Osha. Osha's telling her sister not to do that, but we both noted in episode 3, Osha was doing the exact same thing. So, but when nobody was around to see her do it. And I think that comes down to a lot of explaining her character's good because she's supposed to be good. I'm not angry or upset about the Jedi, about like not becoming a Jedi, because I'm not supposed to be. Because I made the decision to leave because I failed. And I think there is a tone of that frustration, the look she gives to people whenever they bring up that she failed and she's like not a Jedi. In episode, I think it was episode 4, when they are at the temple and like, I'm not going to wear those stupid civilian clothes. Like, there's aspects of this anger that I feel simmer underneath her throughout the entire show. I was expecting her to unleash her anger. I just expected it to be towards May, which we saw. We saw her get angry at May and do that. I was expecting that to happen because her confrontation with May is she pulls out the stun gun and then misses. And it introduces a very complicated relationship between the two of them where May thought she was dead. And then he's like, yeah, now I can go back to OSHA. But we've seen OSHA, whenever she talks about May, being like, May has to pay. May has to pay for what she's done. And it's very much in that vein of that. And when they finally see each other in episode 4? End of episode 4, right?
4 is day, so end of episode 5 night. Probably.
Yeah, episode 5. There we go. At the end of episode 5 episode 5 night, we see her like immediately reject May and just be like, no, like we see that. So her finding out Soul lied for years, that Soul was behind her mother's death. Soul was the reason, like all this trauma, and the entire time. And you think back, she just mentioned every time Soul told her, hey, you have to forgive your sister, Soul was looking to be forgiven himself.
Soul very specifically was not saying, hey, I killed your mom, by the way, so you have to forgive me.
Yeah. It was like her being with like Chimere, I felt was like that last little bridge to be like, hey, there's another way to do this. You put on the helmet, you are in touch with the Force again. It was scary, like she doesn't know what happened outside of that helmet. But like she touched the Force again, which means like it's that whole, the Force is so powerful, like how can you deny it? How can you like not touch it? This idea of like the feeling of what it means to be a Force user and getting to touch that a little bit and then being like, no, I'm not doing it. And then, we get her unleashing that dark side. She feels the anger, and Chimere's there pushing her too. Oh, May, like Soul's telling you the truth. Like, feel your anger, like feel it. Like, yeah, like guiding her for it. And like, it's perfect. It's really perfect the way that they do that. I loved it. I loved that aspect of it. So I didn't feel like it was too whiplashy, but I could see how, if you're not over analyzing it the hell out of it like I am. If you're taking it as like, no, May's cool with not being a Jedi. It's like, you look back at those scenes and I don't agree.
I don't think she was cool with it so much as like, it felt like she had moved on and would like, if this show doesn't kick off, she's happy being a mechanic. Like she's fine. She's out there living her life. She's got Pip. Like if anything, like that had helped her grow. And then like the whole Jedi thing comes back and like brings all that flooding back.
I think that's the thing, is that if May had never killed Indara or had never been outed or like figured out after killing Indara, OSHA continues her life as a mechanic unhindered, unbothered. Yeah. Because that's kind of the idea. It's like it's The Godfather Part 3. The Godfather, he's out of the business, but then they pull, or Godfather, I think Part 2, where he's like, I'm out of the business, but they keep pulling me back in. Or maybe it's just Godfather 1. Maybe I'm just completely losing when that line happens. Michael Corleone says like, every time I try to get out, they keep pulling me back in. Like I can't get away from it. It's very much that same thing. Like the tragedy around Soul and OSHA's relationship. Also, I'll never let you fall. Like, such a good like callback now to it. It'd be like, he let her fall. Like he did what he was supposed to do by telling her the truth, but it's so late. It's so late. And how much anger she always had towards May, and knowing in the back of his head that he deserved that anger, not May. Like, that's another part of it too, is like Soul has this multifaceted levels of guilt that I don't think come across very well sometimes. And I blame that entirely on like the kind of like cultural, like language barrier sometimes. Mm-hmm. We found out that, he was learning.
He basically like learned English to do this role. So, like you can only cram so much context into the words that you're saying if you don't really know the words if you haven't grown up knowing the words you're saying, kind of thing. Yeah.
Having a certain level of gravitas to lines that I think probably needed it. I only blame on like he didn't know English well enough to do those lines. I think the level of depth that they could have been done, but I also
the director didn't like push him.
That's another thing too. It's like
to give better direction on the like they accepted like okay that's the take we're gonna get. Let's move on.
Rather than really pushing for it. Yeah, I think that's another thing. I don't think it's anybody's fault other than it was a collective like, hey, how far do we push this? Because this is a very non-traditional way of doing this.
Yeah.
Of like...
I mean, like, that's always been a Star Wars thing. Like,
yeah.
Go back to, like, the original New Hope kind of thing, and there are plenty of lines in there where it's like what Sam Witwer always goes out there and basically talks about the idea that, like, George Lucas's, like, direction was basically, like, faster and more. Like, do it faster and
more intense.
And more intense, yeah.
Faster, more intense. Go.
And... Because Lucas is not a actor's director.
He is 100% like a cinematographer's director. Like he is a like you go back, you watch American Graffiti, and like that film is fucking gorgeous.
Yeah,
but like that's where his talent lies, is in seeing and like his storytelling that way. Directing actors is not his deal. Mm-hmm. A la the best scene in Attack of the Clones is a scene where he didn't give any direction. He let them improv it. It's the dinner scene.
Yeah.
Between Padme and Anakin. That feels natural, feels normal.
It's the one that, the one bit of their relationship that feels like it's not wooden as F.
the one gem in that pile of shit movie. Because as famously known, or infamously known, I despise Attack of the Clones so much. On every level. But that one scene is like my gem. I look at that and I'm like, this is what that relationship actually is. And I love that. Because the natural chemistry between, the actors, everything, and George Lucas not telling them to go faster and more intense. God. 100%, like, Star Wars never been the best, like, place for actors to, like, develop.
Yeah. You can have bits, like, Ewan McGregor coming in and doing, like, what he was doing. Like, he thrived despite the circumstances, I think.
I think he thrived in the lack of stronger direction, more direct, like more frame direction. He thrived in that kind of space for that in a way that I don't think other actors could, obviously. I mean, I think it's the same way Samuel L. Jackson's scenes, he always dominated the presence that he was in those scenes with, as Mace Windu.
I disagree on that front. I think
that's fair.
I think it is easily the most boring that Samuel L. Jackson has ever been on screen.
I don't think you're wrong, but I also think that's because he has much more compelling roles. I don't know if he's ever...
It's very much like, why, like, apart from, hey, Samuel L. Jackson's cool, fine, why put him in, like, the most stoic and meditative master play? Like, it makes, like, it is such a bad use of Samuel L. Jackson in those movies. But
I don't think you're wrong on that.
Anyway.
But I felt he was a commanding presence whenever he was in those scenes.
Sure.
Maybe that's just because it's like the pure gravitas and charisma of Samuel L. Jackson can even get that role feeling more alive.
I mean, he basically talked Lucas into making purple lightsabers a thing. So
pretty much, yeah. And the staff and the prop team did put Bamf on all of his lightsabers. Yeah. So Bamf, BAMF on a lightsaber, canon.
Sure. Anyway, I mean, canon in as much as like, hey, also Gillette Razor's a communicator apparently, or whatever that one is that from Phantom Menace. Notorious prop stuff. Anyway,
rather than what the weird metal tube that they use in New Hope, like bad props are also a history of Star Wars.
Any other favorite moments or anything before we wrap up?
Once again, lightsaber combat in Episode 8 is phenomenal.
Yeah, I really, in particular, I was going to call that out too. I love the fight. I love we get to see much more of the like sword and dagger kind of fight from Kamir.
Oh yeah, his hidden Shoto, pulling that out and using a dual lightsaber style like you use in Jedi Survivor.
Fallen Order and Survivor.
Yeah, so Survivor is 100. Like, loved seeing that representation.
Yeah.
Somebody out there, give me a lightsaber blaster on screen, please. I want to see that style done on screen.
I mean, it's the. Are you talking about? not Clone Wars Rebels, Ezra's.
No. I'm talking about in Survivor. You can do the thing where you have the
want
blaster.
a lightsaber and a blaster. You
Yeah,
want somebody to
I want that dueling lightsaber blaster combo. I want to see that on screen because I enjoyed the hell out. That was my favorite style.
Sure. But yeah, I in particular the moment that stood out for me was the cool like throwing both of them and like thinking he's gonna get the win over Soul, and then Soul learning from the first fight of like turning his lightsaber off when he needs to so it doesn't get shorted was great. Him like turning lightsaber off to do like the force push to like deactivate those sabers.
And using the force to prevent like hitting him so that he couldn't use the force to pull the lightsabers back to him.
Yeah.
Awesome. Like fight choreography off the like God.
Had a little bit more of the kind of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon vibes that the fights from the first episode gave us when like they kind of jump down and kind of like fall back or whatever that moment.
Love the wire work on it. It was so good.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff. And then there was also just that other moment that I ended up liking of like Vernestra comes off the ship and immediately has like the sense of come here immediately like puts the helmet back on.
Oh yeah. The moment her first foot hits the ground.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yep.
So good.
The glimpse of inferiority that like he feels for his former master kind of thing. That is a dynamic that I would be interested to see.
I want to see that in season 2 so
pay
badly.
off in a season 2, but and then
the
moment
ultra
where she,
confident stranger all of a sudden looking like frightful and weak.
Yeah.
So good.
I think those were the big moments I wanted to call out. Were the good fight stuff in episode 8 as well. All right, well, let's dive into our report card then. We're grade from A+ to F. What do you want to give? Not just these 2 episodes, but like what do you want to give the Acolyte as a whole? Now that we're here at the end,
I think the Acolyte's like it's an A- territory. I think it has a big pacing issue with its episodes, but overall, I think that it is such a boon to have such a different kind of Star Wars series, a Star Wars. Like I think it gives a credence and evidence that the same thing Andor did, where telling non-trilogy era stories is where you can find some really great stuff. Not like a Mandalorian which is on like finished 3 seasons plus Book of Boba Fett, so 4 seasons of Mandalorian stuff. Like we've gotten that aspect of it enough that I don't think we have to go back to it very much more often. I think Mandalorian's good being kind of wrapped up the way that it is. I think that like Andor coming back for season 2, I'm very excited about. But we all know where Andor ends. We know where Andor's story ends. Mm-hmm. We just get to see the beginning and the middle now.
Yeah, especially the season 2, they very much have been like, Rogue One's a coming. So yeah, we pretty much know that like we're going to be in the lead up to Rogue One for season 2 of Andor, and so we'll also probably see some of those other characters. And much like we saw, much like a lot of season 1 of Andor was like Mon Mothma, I would not be surprised if we also see some of the other Rogue One characters, like the pilot and like Baze and Donnie Yen's character. Is it Donnie Yen? Like basically like see some of the other crew. Obviously, we're gonna get the big robot, the Alan Tudyk robot, coming into the fold, but and even maybe like see a little bit of where was it Ren? I've forgotten all the names.
Jin?
Jin, yeah, Jin or so. Maybe see a little bit of her in like the lead up to.
Maybe I think it could go in a lot of different ways, but I think getting these. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be non-Jedi stories.
Sure.
Getting a High Republic story is such a breath of fresh air for this franchise. Getting to explore other parts of Star Wars is fun and engaging. And
to see a story from the bad guy's side.
Yeah. See a story from like, hey, what if the Jedi, like, let's be very real and confrontational to the problematic nature of the Jedi as an order, as a system. We're seeing the Republic enter its fall. Like these are the last days of the High Republic that we're seeing. So we are going to start seeing the rampant corruption that ends up leading us up to episode 1, where you have a fucking trade blockade starving a planet out, which like
And everybody's cool with it.
Yeah, and everybody's cool with it. Wow, a massive tragedy and possible genocide happening, and people are just chill with it. Like, where's your proof, bro? Where's your evidence? Oh man, imagine that. Imagine the parallels with that. I digress. It is a fun look at seeing Star Wars from different perspectives, different points of view, and getting to see it from a different era's point of view as well. Has been fascinating, fun. Loved all the characters. I don't think there was a single character that I didn't care for on some level, other than the shitty mascot. Fuck that thing to hell. It made no goddamn sense. Whose side is it even on? It fucks with Soul, and it fucks with May, and it fucks with Osha. I don't understand its purpose.
I mean, they're a civilian. They got roped into this.
Man, fuck that man. Fuck that animal. I always said fuck that mammal, but fuck that animal.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm gonna ultimately land on a B- here.
That's fair.
I like the ideas behind the Acolyte much more than the execution ends up kind of pulling it off. And so I think as time wore on, the highs started to wear on me, and I was like, okay, did I actually like it, or was it just flashy in the moment and it was something new? But then, as soon as I think about it a little bit, it's like, oh yeah, a lot of this doesn't hold up. I think that's kind of where I end up falling on a lot of that. So
that's also fair. My only reason I gave it an A- is because it gave us that bath scene with Manny Jacinto, and I was just so there for that moment.
Sure.
Also, just overall lightsaber combat scenes were off the fucking chains. That's what raises it. I think if I gave it a less if I really looked at it and gave it a less my personal bias, I would say it's in the realm of a B+, which is kind of where it averages out between my A- and your B-. So
yeah,
I think that middle ground, that kind of that combined grade, averaged grade, is where I think it really lies. So
yeah. All right. Extra credit. Other suggestions if you like this. Disney Plus is going to recommend to you Ahsoka, Andor, The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, A New Hope, Tales of the Empire, The Empire Strikes Back, and The Bad Batch. Extracurriculars. You watch anything else on Disney Plus, Cam? I don't think either of us are. You're
right
out,
now, no.
You're out there watching your House of the Dragon stuff. We're both watching a lot of Dropout stuff. But yeah,
right now
anything else is on.
Right now it's
Disney Plus
we just entered a lull period for content that I like out of Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Which is the odd thing. I think the next thing we're going to watch is Deadpool 2. So
yeah, Deadpool 2 is going to be next week's episode. In the lead up
so
to
we're watching that.
Deadpool 3 or Deadpool and Wolverine. It'll be interesting because I'm curious. It's fascinating because I feel like I remember so many more things from Deadpool 2, but it's the I remember thinking back a while back and being like, oh yeah, Domino from Deadpool, and it's like, oh, she's only in Deadpool 2 and stuff like that, and obviously Cable's going to be a big bit of the Deadpool 2 stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how much Deadpool 2 resonates versus the original time, when we were originally seeing it, and how it holds up compared to Deadpool 1, compared to Logan last week. So yeah, Deadpool 2 on the horizon. That'll be next week's episode. And then I think we're going to take a trip down 90s lane here in August, I think is our plan. We're going to check out some 90s movies from certainly my youth, and then your very young youth that you probably also watch these, but maybe we're visiting them after the fact or something like that. Whereas I lived it and I breathed the Camp Nowheres of the world and the heavyweights.
I mean, these were the blockbuster classics that my family would rent all the time. So
Yeah.
I watched them
There you go.
contemporarily, but it was a much more of a video rental era than going to see them in the theaters.
Yeah.
I was not old enough to go to the theater to see these movies, but we rented them all the time.
Gotcha.
So, especially Heavyweights. Heavyweights is an Abbott family classic right there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this week's episode of That D Plus Show. Thank you, Cam, for joining me to talk about The Acolyte as we wrap this season up. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot, 2 B's and 2 T's. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I started streaming again. I'm streaming in the afternoons, usually from 2 to starting from 2 to 3, and then streaming for a couple hours. Not a strong schedule right now, folks.
2 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, 2 p.m. Pacific. Sometime after 2 p.m. Pacific, whether it's 2:30 or 3 o'clock. No strong schedule right now. I am just putting my feet back into it. Today, if you're like, hey, what happened to Thursday? I've been sick today. So Trevor knows because we live together and he sees me.
Yep. These are true things.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've been playing some Zenless Zone Zero.
Yep, I've been doing Zenless Zone Zero. There's a couple other games that I might be wanting to switch over to. We'll see how I feel about it tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow, of course, the day this comes out, and it's Friday. We're putting this. I'm assuming tomorrow morning, as per usual.
Yes.
Yeah. So stop by in the afternoon if you want, or you're listening to this over the weekend, and it's too late. And look forward to me, probably streaming next week.
You're doing it to your. Are you doing it on Twitch and YouTube or just YouTube?
Just YouTube right now because I found out the multi-stream thing you have to pay for.
Sure.
And that's not happening right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to watch the series,
the VODs are out there.
The VODs are on youtube.com/thatnerdysite. I'm streaming to youtube.com/thatnerdysite. So shout out to everybody who's ever stopped by and watched. I've appreciated it. It's been nice to see people, stop by. Seeing actual viewer numbers on it, it's like, oh, weird. I never saw that on Twitch, which is cool. Discoverability on YouTube seems to be a thing that is happening. So I'm digging it. Also, I want to give a massive shout out to not a massive shout out. I just want to mention the name of the series is No Gotcha for Old Nerds. Although Trevor has pointed out, I'm 34 and I'm not old. But, we went with the naming convention. I just assumed it because most streamers I see are in their 20s.
Because Cameron learned so many things from Friday Night Dying Light.
Yeah, that's a good point. We probably won't be doing that
Cameron,
anymore.
real good with branding.
Yeah.
Branding
Listen, my branding is fun, but not great as far as listen, this is in my personal life. In my professional life, my branding's been great.
Cameron's branding is for an audience of one, and that is Cameron.
Just me. I think it'd be fun to see that and do that. This is also I worked in marketing, and I will be the first to tell you, my brand, the thing I brand my personal projects as, not at all palatable for the general consensus. Not at all. I'll be the first person to admit that is not how good branding works. If anything, it should just be that. Well, also the real title of the stream series is That Nerdy Streams. So go check out That Nerdy Streams, which is just over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. So
there you go. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. In addition to go and check Cameron's streams out. We had our That Nerdy Site show this last week where we talked through... what did we talk through? It was something, I don't know.
You did Unicorn Overlord, and I talked about
more...
I talked about more Dawn Trail.
Yeah. Did we talk Dawn Trail?
Maybe not.
No, you talked above the human one.
That's right. Yes. Once Human.
Once Human. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. We found it. We found what we talked about 4 days ago. Life isn't a blur. Whatever. What it is for me is I'm already thinking about I've been playing a lot of Metal Gear this week, and so
I'm so excited
I know
to talk to you about that.
In particular Metal Gear Solid 5, but I also picked up the the Volume 1 collection, so maybe I'll jump into those old games for the first time and see how they hold up, / how much of Kojima's shit can I stomach. We will see.
A lot less in Metal Gear Solid 1 than you think.
Sure, yeah. I imagine that is the most mainline normal of his games before he, takes the gloves off and gets unhinged.
I would say Metal Gear on the NES is the most normal one.
Sure, of course.
But Metal Gear Solid is where he starts getting a lot of that sci-fi, modern sci-fi bullshit.
He is akin to... He's a kindred spirit of the Final Fantasy people in that cutscenes are a thing. I'm gonna go buck wild now. I can make a movie out of video games. Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
That's the feel of it. Really cool stuff though. I'm looking forward to you getting into those because they are some of my favorite games of all time. I think the Metal Gear franchise is goated as hell. The only reason I didn't play 5 at launch is because of I was protesting with my dollars.
Sure.
Didn't fucking hell. That game sold like gangbusters.
It was a great game.
Yeah.
And you still never played it, right?
No, but I've been spoiled to hell with it. People just assume that I played it and spoiled that shit hard for me. So.
I mean, for me, especially as somebody who had no real context of the rest.
Yeah, that's
of
the
the
thing.
games,
You enjoyed that game.
Like the gameplay is king in that game. Like story stuff, I'm sure there's stuff there for people who love the series to really enjoy as well. And I certainly did a whole bunch of explainer videos to understand and have more context around where it falls in the timeline and who some of these characters. I mean, some of the characters Psycho Mantis shows up at the beginning in the thing as a kid. And I'm like, oh, I know Psycho Mantis. I know
the meme.
Oh, have you been playing blah blah blah? Yeah, I know the character even if I've never played Metal Gear 2. So yeah, there's a lot of those kinds of things where I'm like, oh, this is clearly somebody else in the series and in the franchise stuff. But getting a little bit more deeper into some of that context and stuff. But anyway, so yeah, I'm already thinking ahead to Monday's episode where that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be talking about and continuing to play this weekend. So yeah, check out That Nerdy Site Show and check out That Nerdy Streams from Cameron. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. If you like what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, class dismissed, and may the force be with you.
And also with you.
And what is it you say? May the force be with you?
It's such a dick line to give her. It's so good. Yeah, that scene alone elevates this series for me. So
there you go.
Anyway.